What if I told you?
Anakin was actually portrayed by Hayden Christensen well. What's up, guys? Gabriel here. Today I just want to talk to you guys about Anakin. Anakin is one of the most criticized characters in the Star Wars movies just because of his portrayal by Hayden Christensen. One of the most prominent criticisms that I hear about Anakin is that Hayden Christensen can't act, and that the prequel sucked because Hayden Christensen just didn't know how to portray Anakin. Well, today I just want to address that because I wholeheartedly disagree with that. This is why. So, it's easy to look at characters like Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. You know, they're just so charismatic and so smooth with the ladies and stuff. And the truth is that not everyone can be that character. The thing that makes those characters good and makes them unique and stand out and makes them, you know, beloved by the fans is the fact that, you know, they're anomalies, right? So they're really alpha male, they're really charismatic, they're really outgoing, and they're not really daunted by social interaction. And that's what makes them special. But the thing is, not everyone can be Han Solo, not everyone can be Lando Calrissian. And a lot of people expect Anakin to be on that level. Especially prequel Anakin or episode 2 Anakin. But the truth of the matter is that Anakin was a teenager that, if we look at Anakin's background, he was a teenager that he had been raised in the Jedi Temple. He had been training for 10 years. The Jedi had taught him to repress his emotions, to not give in to love and to, you know, things like that. So naturally he wasn't going to have a lot of talent with talking to girls. And the thing is that I don't understand why he gets so much criticism when there's so many movies out there that deal with this awkward teenage kind of romance. You know, whenever there's a point in everyone's life where you don't really know how to talk to the opposite gender, right? You don't really know how to be smooth or be like, you know, charming. So Anakin, let's back up a little bit and look at Anakin's upbringing, because I think it's really important. First of all, he was a slave. You know, he was raised as a slave until he was 9 years old. And then he was rescued by the Jedi. So first of all, as a slave, you're already repressed. You're already told you can't do certain things. And then to come into the Jedi Temple, the Jedi tell you you can't, you know, you can't love anybody, you can't have any type of attachments. I'm sure there was like girls in the Jedi Temple that he might have been, you know, tempted with or whatever. But the thing is, as a little slave boy, the first decently attractive female that he ever saw was Padme.
Are you an angel?
What? I'm glad to have met you, Anakin.
I was glad to meet you too.
He lived in Tatooine with a bunch of aliens, and I mean, I don't know, he probably saw Padme and was, you know, awestruck by her, so he just kept her in the back of his mind, and he kind of became obsessed, right? Like, he just couldn't let her go. You know, in episode 2, the lines that say, you know,
"You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams."
It comes across as really creepy and really awkward, but the thing is, there was no one really there to tell him that, like, how to interact. He just didn't know how to express his emotions, how to handle that. So, you know, all the clunky dialogue.
I don't like sand. I don't like sand. I don't like sand. Sand.
I think it's perfect because it perfectly portrays that teenage kind of like romance, that teenage awkward, you know, confused, don't really know what to say situation. We've seen it in so many movies. And so it's just one of those things where Anakin kind of is expected to be this Han Solo character because of his power. And the thing is, there's a lot of gifted people that just aren't very socially, they're just not very good socially. And that's, Bobby Fischer. He was a great chess player. He was a genius. But he just didn't really know how to interact with people. He dealt with a lot of anger. He was very impulsive. You'll see a lot of the genius personalities throughout history. They're just very erratic and they're very impulsive, and they're just not very socially. They're just kind of socially awkward. They don't mesh well with other people. And Anakin was very gifted with the Force. Anakin was extraordinarily gifted with the Force. He had all these talents, but he had this emotional side of him that had always been repressed. That in combination with wanting to control his fate, control the narrative of his life, keep people from dying, all these things, all the loss that he suffered. So you got to think of it this way. Anakin has obsessed about Padme for 10 years, right? He sees Padme, and that obsession just comes out in like a very teenage way, right? It makes sense why Anakin would behave like this and would talk like this and wouldn't really know how to handle himself. Now, if you see him in episode 3, when he's already married, he's already kind of he's already past that awkward teenage, like, do you like me, do you not like me stage. He's already past that. And so he's able to talk to Padme with a lot more, just a lot more normal, and his dialogue's a lot better and stuff like that. And you see his progression, but that's the thing. People just expect Darth Vader. They see Anakin as, with the power of Darth Vader and that kind of, regal presence that Darth Vader has. And with that power, they just expect Anakin, young Anakin, to be this really charismatic, really commanding personality, and that's just not the case. That was an evolution. That was an evolution of Anakin where he became, a ruthless tyrant. But before that, he was just a kid that was, awkward and didn't know how to. He didn't know how to act, right? He didn't know what to say and how to carry himself. So to me, Anakin's awkwardness and creepiness really doesn't need to be fixed. It's perfect. It makes sense for his character. I mean, guys, he was raised as a monk, like naturally, taught to repress his emotions. He was obsessing over her, and he was a teenager. Like, he didn't have any prior, like, this was his first love, if you will. This was like a teenage fantasy he was living. I mean, so it makes sense for him to be awkward. I mean, think of like an awkward homeschooler, okay? And I'm not saying this to dig on homeschoolers. I did homeschooling for a few years, but there's a difference between being homeschooled and being homeschooled. Like, there's some homeschoolers that just don't have social interaction. Like, I was lucky enough to have, I was on a basketball team, I was on choir, I did all sorts of activities. But there's homeschoolers, right, that they don't come out of the house, right? So they don't, or like in some Amish cultures or whatever, they have no interaction with other people, so they don't know how to deal with these other people, right? And so when you're in a, like, think of like, someone that's homeschooled with his brothers and sisters, right? That's kind of like what the Jedi was. Anakin was living like a monk in the Jedi Temple, much like, a homeschooler would only be exposed to his brothers and sisters, or like someone in an Amish community where they have no contact with the outside world. They're stuck in that environment, so they're naturally going to be very awkward talking to other people. So it makes sense for Anakin to, once he kind of starts to get out into the real world a little bit and experiment with politics and things like that, he's going to have a learning curve there. You can't expect him to automatically be Han Solo. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So that's why I think Hayden Christensen's portrayal is actually pretty accurate. It's what Anakin should have been. And I think the prequels, they're not perfect. I really enjoy the prequels. I like them, but they're obviously they're not perfect. They have their flaws. But I don't think that is one of them. I don't think Anakin should have been any different. Like, you know, he's very immature. He's very erratic at that young age. You know, he tells Padme things like, you know, that he wants more power, that, you know, that he's ready for the trials. And so, you know, it makes sense. It makes sense. And so I think that's something that people don't really think about when they think about Anakin, but you have to kind of break down the psychology of each character and the background, and you have to kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit, and it's about the context too. You have to put yourself in that situation, and when you look at it from that perspective, I think that it really makes sense for Anakin to just be like, you know, this awkward teenager that, you know, that has a crush on this girl, and he just doesn't know how to deal with it. Like, we've seen that in so many movies throughout the 80s and 90s. There's just that awkward teen crush stage, right? Where, like, the guy doesn't really know what to say, and he kind of, like, fumbles through words and doesn't really have all the right words, right? So, like, I'm kind of the same way, to be honest. Like, if I'm really not interested in a girl, you know, I'm so comfortable around her. Like, I can just be myself completely. But usually when there's a girl that I like and she's around, sometimes that's whenever I just kind of, like, I forget how to act, right? And that's just me, but I can relate to Anakin in that sense, because, you know, the people that we really like are the people we really don't want to lose in our lives. That kind of, you know, that person that you've, especially for Anakin, that you know, he was obsessing about her for 10 years as a monk, and then he finally sees her and he finally gets an opportunity to be alone with her. So, like, you can just imagine the awkwardness. You can imagine, like, Anakin biting his lips and you know, trying to figure out what to say. So it really makes sense. It makes sense for his character when you think about it that way. The thing about it is that Anakin's portrayal is realistic. And when we go watch a movie, we want to sometimes expect, like, you know, our heroes to be perfect and to be like this grandiose thing. And the fact of the matter is that George Lucas made the characters pretty realistic. Even Jar Jar Binks, I will go as far as to say this: he is a very annoying character. But the truth of the matter is that in life, there's annoying people. And you know, Jar Jar, you can have an opinion one way or another, but I mean, he's an annoying character on purpose. I don't think he was ever intended to not be annoying. Even Obi-Wan is annoyed by him from the beginning, and he's like, "Master, do we have to, like, drag this guy along?" Like, it's intended to be that way, because if everyone in the cast was just perfect, like, to me that would be kind of boring. It'd be kind of bland. But I think with Jar Jar, that's a whole other topic. But I'll just say this: I think it's beautifully ironic that he's the one that was responsible for the creation of the clone army. He's the one that authorized it in Padme's absence. And he's the one that, because of that creation of the clone army that he authorized in Padme's absence, he was the one that fueled Anakin's warmongering and lust for power, because it flung the galaxy into that conflict where Anakin was exposed to war and he was exposed to, you know, killing on a daily basis. So I think it's beautifully ironic that Jar Jar Binks, you know, has such a pivotal role, you know, such a seemingly insignificant character, you know, he's like a fool. He's the fool in the story. He's the jester. And, but he's the guy that ultimately, you know, has a lot of, responsibility in, turning Anakin to the dark side, because, you know, he threw the galaxy into conflict by authorizing the creation of the clone army. And so that's a whole different topic, but all in all, to say is that all the characters have a purpose, and I think that in Anakin's case, he was portrayed very well by Hayden Christensen, and very accurately, as what I would imagine a teenager with a lot of power that doesn't know how to, like, handle himself yet would act, you know, and it just makes sense. And I think George Lucas did a good job of writing him. But yeah, that's what I think about that, and I've been wanting to do a video on this topic for a while. But I want to know what you guys think. Drop a comment, let me know what you think. I'll see you guys in the next video, and as always, we out of here.